Hey guys, Sam here again, and today I'm talking about the second phase in our AIR framework, which is the implement phase. So, what is the AIR framework? It's a very simple and easy framework, teaches you how to just think about AI and automation and how you can implement those things into your business if you already have an existing business. As the little title here says, how to automate your business. I just want to go through the step-by-step thinking process of how to tackle this. Because as mentioned in the last video, when we talked about the assess phase, a lot of the companies that I speak to or a lot of people in my network, they just struggle with where to get started. So if you didn't check out the assess phase, check my last video and you'll see how to just even start thinking about where to prioritize and what areas of your business should be focused on first and how to sort of dive deeper and identify the areas to start doing implementation of AI and automation where it makes sense. And in today's video, we're going to continue the example where we discuss the agency, the SEO service that they offered, and the process that we went through to optimize their content production process in their delivery function of the business. So I'm going to walk you through that step by step today. So to start off with, what I always like to do is just think about this specific process. We're going to call this the content production process. Let's put a little bit of a heading here. And what we're going to do is we're just going to think about the tools that are used in this process currently, right? And this just gives us a good understanding of all the different touch points that are going on in this process and the people that are interacting with these different tools to deliver the output. So we've put tools for content production. So what's actually being used? There's probably more things here than you might think, right? So the first thing that we're going to have is some sort of project management tool. That's the start of the content production process. How do we even know when to produce or what to produce? What schedule we're producing on? Usually there's a project management tool in place. That might be Asana, it might be Trello, it might be whatever you use. In this case, it was ClickUp that these guys were using. So we have ClickUp as tool number one. Then there are tools being used like Google, so to Google search, to do research. Then there are tools like Google Docs and Sheets that are also being used to actually do the work and to store data related to the client. Then there are other tools like ChatGPT that are being used, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how that was being used previously. There are other SEO tools that were being used like Search Console, so Google Search Console, and also things like SE ranking, I think it's called, and if I can remember correctly, and Ahrefs. And then also Upwork. So Upwork was being used to manage freelance writers that were actually producing the content as part of the whole process. So these are kind of the tools that are involved in this whole process. We just want to list those here just so that we know what we're working with, just so that we can figure out where we can automate and where we might be able to implement AI to improve the actual process moving forward. So now that we've done the tools, we now need to analyze how does the current process work? And this is a very, very straightforward, simple thing to do. For example, if I'm working with a client on this, I get the person that is in charge of the process. So in this case, it was the SEO manager. And I would just ask them, how does this process unfold? And the trick here is just making the person who is in charge of this process feel totally comfortable diving into the detail, because the detail is what we want here. We want the literal step by step of how this actually comes to pass, how this content gets produced. So it's going to start in the project management tool. So let's just say there is a monthly task that gets assigned. We're going to do this step by step. So monthly task is assigned to create the content. Then after that, the account manager would review the keywords, research, and content plan to identify what the next article is going to be or what the next blog post or piece of content is going to be. Then they would go and do competitor research on the keywords that are related to that blog post, article, or piece of content. On keywords. Then once they've done this research and they've been through these two steps, they would have then created a brief for the writer. Then we're going to send that brief to the writer on Upwork. Nope. Go to this. Then the writer would go away and they would deliver the first draft. Now that might take a few days to get the first draft back. Then the account manager would review the content and provide edits and amendment requests. Then importantly, this process would actually cycle around until there is a piece of content that is worthy of publishing. Then there would be ChatGPT. I forgot to mention on the tools here, there was an extra tool that these guys were using, which was a website CMS, which was custom built for these guys. And with that CMS, the way that the content needs to be formatted for the CMS was very specific, HTML formatting. So this content would then be put into a ChatGPT to create the correct formatting. Then there would be like final review and publish. So thanks for following that through with me. That might have been a little bit boring, but I just wanted to show you, these are the kind of details that we need to get through with analyzing the current process. Because now that we've done this, what we can do is we can figure out, okay, well, where are the actual sticking points of this process? What is taking the most time? The monthly task being assigned isn't anything that we need to worry about because we already have automated task assignment that's already happening in ClickUp in this case. So we don't need to worry about that. That all happens as part of the onboarding workflow and automation, which is a separate process and a separate function. So we review the research and the content plan. That takes a little bit of time. The competitor research on for the keywords does a little bit of time. Creating the brief for the writer takes a little bit of time. The sending the brief to the writer on Upwork doesn't really take a lot of time, but then the writer delivering the first draft takes time. And then the review and the edits takes time. So this whole loop here, this is where the most time is spent. And it's also where the most cost is as well, because that's, hiring the writers to actually do this work is where the most cost is in this process. So it's timely and costly, this loop here. ChatGPT to correct the formatting can take a little bit of time because it wasn't consistent output. And then, final review and publish does not take a lot of time at all. That's just a sense check and publish at the end. So the temptation at this point would be to look at all these orange and red boxes and go, okay, well, let's completely overhaul this process and create a fully automated process. So when the task is assigned, the status triggers an AI agent that reviews the keyword research that we did at the beginning of the content plan. It decides on the next piece of content. It uses Perplexity to do all the keyword research via search engine. And it auto creates the brief for the writer, X, Y, and Z, right? So that's the temptation, is to overhaul the entire process. The problem with doing something like that is that you've then got multiple complex points in a new process that if it's not working as well as you would hope at the end of it, it's really hard to pinpoint which part is broken. Is it the new research agent that we created that does the keyword research and content planning? Is it the brief that gets created that we then feed to a new AI assistant who actually does the drafting? So the more of these complex systems that you build together to create this process, the harder it is to debug what's working and what's not and figure out where the problems are in the workflow. So what we want to do again is drill down into this piece here, which is the time-consuming and costly part of the process, which is this red piece. And we're going to start there. And it's the easiest place to start in this example because obviously we're talking about content production. And, AI is pretty good at content production when done in the right way. So then we would plan out exactly what this workflow looks like if this piece here was taken over by some AI and automation tools. So what we're going to do is not to overcomplicate, is we're actually going to keep the first stuff, right? So we're going to keep that manual for now. We can tackle that another time. We'll tackle that later. Let me just move this stuff down. Let's give ourselves a little bit of space to work with here. So we're going to keep this first stuff manual. All right. Then the next part here is create the brief for the writer. So in this next step, rather than creating the brief for the writer, we're still going to create the brief, which again, I know is manual, but we're going to create the brief for the AI content assistant. And what we're going to aim to do is remove the writers from the content drafting process. So we're going to create the brief for the AI content assistant, and we're going to create a actual custom assistant, or a few different custom assistants that will do the writing of the content. But again, this is still manual, right? So what we'll do in this flow is we'll mark down the manual actions as blue. So we're going to create that brief. It can be very much the same as the brief for the writer, but maybe restructured slightly to get the best output for an AI assistant. That brief would be fed into, and we're going to mark these as green, as these would be the AI assistants or the automations, would be fed into a content production assistant. And that would be a custom GPT that we've built with highly specific set of instructions for whatever the business is and whatever the type of content that's being produced is. And then once that assistant has finished, we'll have a checking agent or assistant, let's call it. So again, this assistant is a custom GPT that has been set up with a highly specific set of rules. Maybe it has a scoring criteria based on what we're looking for from the content. And it will essentially rank the content that this assistant has produced. And then depending on if it's good enough, if it is good enough, we will then feed it to a third one while we're here, which is a formatting assistant. So that this piece here, we can actually just auto format it in a very structured fashion, and it spits out a consistent format each time. So you've got these three assistants that are doing this whole piece automatically, and they are chained together. And we can build rules in here. So the checking assistant, if it decides that this content is not good enough based on a rule system, let's say it ranks out of 10 and anything below a 7 is not good enough, it can talk back to the content production assistant, and it can repeat the cycle until it actually produces a piece of content that is good enough. Then it formats it, and then we get the output, and then we publish, right? So final review and publish once more. So you can see that's the process of how we would go about implementing a new system that can save a lot of time and money just by focusing in on one specific part of one process. And there are many of these processes in your business, right? So, and there are other things that we could do to make it even quicker. Later down the line, which is, in the next video, we would look at refining. We would come back to this automation, test how well it's doing, or check in and see how well it's doing. What's the content like that it's producing? Are we happy? Is there tweaks that we need to make? And then maybe we start to figure out how we can automate this part as well, so that there is less human reliance on this part of the process. Obviously, part of this would be building all of this out in make.com and in ChatGPT, in ChatGPT's assistant builder. But I'm not going through the details of building things out in this video. I just wanted to show you the process of how to think about implementation. So yeah, hopefully that was useful, guys. In the next video, we will go over the refinement process, and I'll go through an example of that. Any questions, as always, drop them in the comments below. I'll be happy to help out where I can. If you did like the video and you are enjoying the content, please do give me a like and subscribe on the video. That gives me the sweet approval that I'm looking for to continue making these videos, as I really enjoy doing it. But I want to make sure that it's useful for people. I'm going down the right path and explaining the right things. So anything that you want me to make a video of in regards to any of this stuff, let me know in the comments below, and maybe we can build it into the pipeline. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.